Embassy Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show on KEVT Power Talk 1210 AM. Hour number 2 here of the Jake Feinberg Show, first show of the new year. We've already heard from Millie Vera and Evie Sands, and now we just heard the beautiful guitar of one of a virtuoso and a guy who has been just cutting it loose for the last 60-plus years. Dennis Budimir, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show. How you doing, Dennis?
Dennis, he's talking to you. Hello.
How you doing, man?
I can hardly hear you, Jake.
All right. Well, keep it going, man. We're going to be all right. How are you today?
Oh, okay, fine.
Not sure if you caught that track coming in. Did you hear that?
But you were loud the other day when we talked, but right now you're pretty soft.
All right, stay in the moment now. Did you hear that music?
Just so faint. It was very faint.
That was the album Truth with Eric Dolphy.
Oh, okay.
When did you first meet Eric Dolphy?
I met Eric Dolphy when I worked with H.B. Barnum at a club, a very fancy nightclub. I hate to use the term, but in the black neighborhood of Los Angeles. I can't remember the name of the club, but it was a very fancy nightclub. Red Fox was the comedian, and they had a stripper name of all things, Velvet Vaucher. And in the band was me and Eric Dolphy and a few other people. I think it was a quintet. And I met him then. That was in 1955. And HB actually said, "You got to join the union, man." So I joined the Musicians Union Local 47 in L.A. in 1955. And so we worked that gig, and that's the first time I worked and heard Eric.
How did you wind up in the black clubs?
Well, HB had the connection, and he's a black musician, and he got the gig.
I guess the question is, was it Memory Lane? You don't remember the name of the exact?
Well, I was trying to think of that the other day after we talked, and I just can't. But it was a very well-known club, obviously, with Red Fox headlining. It was quite an important club, and I remember it was really difficult between Saturday and Sunday because we would work. As I remember, 9 or 10 to 2, and then we would go sleep for a few hours and do the breakfast show Sunday morning from 6 to 10. And we would crash over at HB's house and then get up and go ahead and do it. And one little funny thing, Red Fox, as you know, I loved him as a comedian. We wore the typical apparel of musicians in those days, the dark blue suit. And unfortunately, a lot of us were a little on the poor side and didn't have a lot of money, and our suits were well used, and they were real shiny. And so every time we would get off the stand when Red Fox would do his little thing, and then when it was a cue that when we had to get back onto the stand, when the dancer was going to start and we would play for the dancer, he would make the caustic remark, "Where do you guys get your suits shined?"
So, can you talk about, were you playing, milestones or heavy jazz tunes blowing over the top of the stripper while she was dancing?
Well, you want me to explain my
Well, here's the thing. I've done a lot of work on strip clubs in North Beach and San Francisco because they were a great outlet for jazz musicians to play. But a lot of the
I didn't know that.
Absolutely. So I think to me it was like, you had this opportunity to get paid, and it provided a lot of work opportunities. In Boston, they had a place called the Combat Zone. So, you'd have two different bands, and it was basically organ trios. This is a little bit later than when you started, but I'm just curious about the kinds. Were you playing Duke Ellington music to this while they were dancing?
That's a good question. It's been so long ago, Jake. That's been how many years? Let's see, 50,
Yeah, no, it's
55,
60
I think,
years.
or
It's been 60.
thereabouts,
Yeah.
but 55, 56, 57. I don't honestly remember. I don't know if we played stripper-type music or maybe we just played jazz. I don't remember.
Sure. A lot of people say the word jazz, and I think I just want your opinion. I'm not asking you to tell me the answer, but a lot of people say the word jazz emanated from the word jass, Jass, meaning you were going to go get a piece of ass, that you were going to go to the brothel.
Oh, I see. I never knew that. No.
And so then when it became popular music after World War II, and the white writers and journalists said, oh, no, we cannot have this kind of ridiculous word. We have to add Z's to it. So they made it jazz.
Okay, I didn't know that. I somehow, if you had to ask my opinion, I think that's full of crap, but it makes for a good story.
Well, let me ask you a question. Can you tell me what your concept of the word jazz means?
Well, I guess no one ever has asked me that before. I guess I would have to say improvised with a swinging feel, with a pulse. Because in classical music, occasionally, even some of the old composers would have people improvise cadenzas, even in maybe Mozart's time. But so the jazz thing has to have a feel, a beat to it. Plus, it's improvised. Obviously, the improvisation is the main kernel of that.
Tell me about what you learned as far as you want to use the word jazz, or can you talk about how playing with cats like Dolphy, Chico Hamilton, expanded your vocabulary and your sonic reach? Because as far as I'm concerned, jazz is a Black American art form, and you were marinating in that in the mid-'50s, and I need you to talk about how it helped you grow as a musician.
You mean from what aspect?
Well, in the sense that those guys, listen, I mean, those guys, they were in some cases junkies. They didn't have health insurance. They were in pain. They were blowing like crazy. They were expanding the language of music, and they were playing from the feel. Not a lot.
Are you intimating or saying that the Black musicians were the ones that would be the influence on me? Is that what you're saying?
I just know. I'm saying I want to know if they had any impact. What kind of influence they had on you?
Did any of the Black musicians have any impact on me?
Absolutely, yes.
Oh, absolutely. My two favorite, best players as a youngster, and even to today. A lot of times people ask me, who are your favorite guitar players? And I have a trite answer. I usually say no one or Bird and Bud. And Bird and Bud, for the uninitiated, Bird was Charlie Parker, and Bud I refer to Bud as Bud Powell. Those two, to me, were the giants in music, and I think my main influences were the Black musicians. I thought they were the best. There's a lot of white musicians that have come along over the years that have been fantastic, one of which was Phil Woods, which I'd like to go into a little more detail about him, but when we get in that area. But just definitely, so many of those musicians were huge influence on me, especially wind instrument players, because to me, a guitar or a piano is somewhat percussive, and I like to play with the feeling of blowing and to get the emotion. When you blow through an instrument or sing, you can do so much more in a way with your instrument than you can with a percussive instrument like piano or guitar. But that's not to say that piano players don't play with a lot of feeling, or guitar players. I think I play with a lot of feeling, but I think you get my gist.
No, and you don't need to. I'm just looking. You don't need to. There's two sides to everything. I just talk specifically about what got you off about Bud Powell what they were doing.
Well, okay. Let's start with Bird. If you ever, are you familiar with Jay McShann?
Yes.
Okay. When Charlie Parker played with Jay McShann was kind of old-timey Ricky Tick. For the folks listening that maybe don't know, I'm trying to remember. He was had a band in the 30s, and when Charlie Parker stood up to play, it was like, where did that come from? It was so revolutionary and so different, and his concept was so incredible, and obviously it became known as bebop, and that's another subject where that came from. Maybe Dizzy Gillespie coined it or something, but anyway, Bird had such an incredible new concept, incredible time feeling, running the changes in a different way, just everything. And Bud Powell, harmonically and time-wise, I mean, they were just phenomenal players. I obviously would put in that group Miles, Sonny Rollins, Coltrane. You know, that's a little later. But I mean, if I had to pick one person, I have two pictures of Charlie Parker in my music room, and it's I mean that's the guy who I idolized. I talked to Phil Woods only one time, and in talking to him, he mentioned the father of us all, and he said it exactly correct.
Yeah, no, I look at those cats, and they were. I just maybe that they were playing their life stories. You know, they were playing the blues. Do you feel like you, did you feel like you were able to did you become a more comfortable person expressing your own voice, playing with guys like, Milt Jackson, just the old guard, the guys that were just the guys that were just playing from their guts,
Well, are you saying that did I feel more comfortable playing with them?
I'm just saying I'm trying to figure out how Dennis Budimir found his own individual sound, and if you were helped.
You know what? I was blessed, Jake. I think it came innately, and I had quite a reputation at 17 in L.A. as a cutting-edge player and very different. And I think a lot of people, when they get some of my old LPs and they marvel at what I was doing at 17 or whatever when I first started, and then later on, I don't necessarily think it came from my listening to Charlie Parker or Bud Powell, although that was an influence, but it came from within somewhere. Where did Charlie Parker come from?
Right.
I mean, you could say he was influenced by Lester Young, but Lester Young was a totally different player than Bird was.
You were also very entrepreneurial, or that might be the wrong word. You were pretty adventurous. I mean, do you remember the first time that you crossed paths with Ravi Shankar, Aluraka?
Yeah, did you say Ravi Shankar?
Yes, please. Yes.
Yes. I was with Bud Shank's group, which in the group, one of the most magnificent musicians that ever lived, and I was privileged to be around him when we were both youngsters and growing up. I'm speaking of Gary Peacock.
Oh, yeah.
And Bud, I don't know how we got the gig, but I'm trying to remember. Do you remember who was on that album that I did with Robbie?
Yeah, I'm going to look it up right now. But I mean, the fact that I guess the better question is, how intoxicating were the polyrhythms for you?
Well, we didn't really get into their thing, and as I recall, we didn't play their thing. I think I don't even remember what was on that album.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to break it down for you here. This is on Louis Haynes on drums, Bud Shank, Ravi Shankar, Gary Peacock. Looks like Paul Horn was also on it. But it was.
Yeah, I think they just tried to do a mixture, but it's been so long ago, and I haven't heard that in years. I'm pleading the fifth. I can't remember.
Well, no, because there are at least 3 tracks here: Raga Shri, Raga Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. Was that the first time you were exposed to Indian music?
Yeah, I think they just tried to do a mixture, but it's been so long ago, and I haven't heard that in years. I don't. I'm pleading the fifth. I can't remember. Well, no, because there are at least 3 tracks here: Raga Shri, Raga Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. Had you played? Was that the first time you were exposed to Indian music? Well, that's the first time I was exposed to it, and I guess I did okay, but unfortunately, I just don't remember the musical content of that.
Sure.
But I was really proud and privileged to have been on that and meet Ravi and everything, because I really admired his form of music.
Yeah, no, because part of me wants to believe that Dennis Budimir was sitting there with a sitar.
Oh no, I just played guitar.
I know. All right. Well, listen, let's play this piece of music here, and then we'll come back and break it down. Okay.
Okay, which one are you playing?
It's we have a game on this program called Name That Tune, so we're gonna put this in and see if you can get this tune. Okay.
Okay.
Studios of KEVT Power Talk 1210 a.m. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. All right, Mr. Budimir, what do you got for us, brother?
Oh, it's interesting. When it first started, I didn't know anything and who it was. And then when the guitar player started playing, I said, man, this guy can really play his ass off. It suddenly dawned on me that I think it was me.
Yeah. I'm not playing. This is your interview, man. That was you.
And what was it? What group was that?
So that was off an album by Chico Hamilton Quintet, and that song was called Gongs East, recorded in 1959. Budimir.
Oh, okay, I see, yeah. Now, see, to me, when that was recorded, no one was really playing that way, and I'm kind of amazed myself. I don't want to sound like a pompous ass, but it sounded pretty. Not only did it sound good, but it was different and unique.
Well, let's go deeper. You said nobody was playing that way. I'm a non-musician. What way were you playing? Please break it down.
Well, see, when you want me to kind of categorize it, that came from within my soul, within my persona, and I don't know where I got that from. That's not Charlie Parker per se or Bud Powell per se. I can hear their influence, but that I just have to say in a proud sense that it was unique to me, and no one else sounded that way. I don't know, because you know what I'm saying? Where did Miles come from? No one sounds like Miles. Yeah. I'm sure he was influenced by Fats Navarro, for example. So you see my point, Jake?
Well, I'm fascinated with this time period. This is even a little bit earlier than the time period that I'm most obsessed with. But this is where the seeds were being planted, and to me, it was this. There was the language of. I just hate labels, but the language of jazz was developing so strongly at this time. You had bebop going into West Coast bop, it wasn't necessarily hard bop, but ultimately, Dennis, it's about, how are you sequencing your ideas? And you said it comes from your soul, the soul of Dennis Budimir. So on live radio on the Jake Feinberg Show, can you please talk about the soul of Dennis Budimir?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Jake, because it's something that I wanted to do for a long time. I didn't do it. I did several albums, 3 or 4 albums on a label called Revelation Records years and years ago, as I remember in the early 60s. And this is the first thing I did on my own, so you could say in, 50-plus years. And I wanted to... Well, I'll just tell you the basic concept of the album. I wanted it to be all gut string. I wanted to try to get the most beautiful sound I possibly could from my instrument, and I wanted to play with a tremendous amount of emotion and feeling, and to be as lyrical as I possibly could. In some ways, to think as a wind instrument and or a vocalist, and to milk the melody for all it's worth. To back phrase like great vocalists or instrumentalists do without sacrificing any true jazz feeling, to select exquisite and the most beautiful pieces of music I could find, and the pieces with a groove, to pick the absolutely best groove, to try and orchestrate it to be as sonorous and complementary, and harmonically to really give the astute listener goosebumps. It's basically me with an orchestra, and I'm very proud of it, real proud of it. And some of the people that have validated are Johnny Mandel, Dave Grusin, Lalo Schifrin, Benny Golson, Quincy Jones, and Phil Woods. And can I just tell you a couple of vignettes, including Benny Golson and
yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah. I went over to Benny Golson's house. He graciously allowed me to come over and play him the album. I had done a lot of work for him when he was scoring television shows at Warner Brothers. So I had already known him, and I met him years ago when I was with Chico when we played in New York, which I like to tell you some stories there that you and your listening audience will really enjoy.
Yeah.
Anyway, we sat there for a couple hours, and he was most complimentary. And one of his tunes is on it called "I Remember Clifford." I'm sure you're aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Dennis, let me just see here. I wrote it down here." He said, "When you play from the inner being of your soul. I've never heard any other guitar player play like you. Did you know Clifford? You play I Remember Clifford as if you knew him. There have been 334 versions recorded before yours, and I've never heard it played any better." Man, I mean, I will take that compliment to my grave. The other compliment, Quincy's was fantastic to get a compliment from him. He's he's Mr. Music in the whole world. But Phil Woods, that one was incredible. He's one of my all-time heroes. I never met him. I never played with him. And unfortunately, I will never play with him because obviously the poor man passed away recently. But I knew, many years ago, I knew Bill Goodwin, his long-time drummer, and I called Bill up and I said, "Bill, I'd like you to send you a copy of my album," which I did, and he called back and really complimented me. I said, "Bill, could you do me a favor? Could you get it to Phil?" And he said, "Sure." Well, I never heard from Phil, and let me preface this by saying I've heard stories about Phil that he's a tough guy, he takes no prisoners, and if he doesn't like it, he'll tell you so. So I was a little apprehensive. One day, about 6 months after Bill Goodwin gave him the album, I got a phone call, and he said, I picked it up, and the other man on the other end said, "This is Phil Woods." I said, "Uh-oh." I started to get a little nervous. And so after a few pleasantries, I said, "Well, Phil, what did you think about the album?" And he said 3 words: "It's effing magnificent."
Yeah. No, I'll tell you, when you bring the good...
That to me, Jake, is I will take that to my grave, man. That's a huge compliment from him.
That's the soul of Dennis Budimir, available on CD Baby and iTunes. It's out there. It's on
CD Baby and Amazon. And I will say one thing: and this is not taking anything away from any other guitar player. I've never heard anyone play like this. It's a very unique album. I think everybody would enjoy it, and I literally was teary-eyed every time I was playing a solo because the pieces that I picked are 3 classical, 3 bossa nova, and the rest jazz tunes or standards. And I reached down and tried to take 60 years of experience and put everything I had into it, and I think it came off. So,
well, no, I mean, and I just, for the audience, I don't want to underestimate the breadth of, Dennis this is his masterpiece, his life work. But I mean, let's be very clear here. This is a man who was on thousands of studio sessions, from, folk rock to psych to jazz.
Let me tell you a cute vignette. Do you know who Abe Laborio is?
I'm looking to get to him immediately. I got to interview Abe. I love the cat.
Okay. Abe came over twice and was crying during a lot of me playing for him the album. And he turned to my wife, who was sitting there after one of the pieces played, and he said, "Did you know that you married a black man?"
But Dennis, I mean, I want to ask you this question, okay? Because, I mean, when you talk about these visceral solos coming from the soul, right? That's really easy to do if you're in your room, But when you're on the bandstand, can you talk about a time when somebody was, pushing the tempo on you or giving you a hard time or telling you didn't belong, and how you blocked out how do you stay focused to be able to channel the soul? Because, it's real easy to get distracted and you can't stay in the moment. But how do you stay in the moment?
Well, first of all, I don't recall offhand that happening when I wasn't a studio player, when I was a quote-unquote jazz player or a guy gigging around. It happened all the goddamn time in the studios, and you have to, that's what studio work is. They could stop the orchestra and say, what the hell are you doing, man, blah, blah, blah. So you have to have a thick skin, but that only really, as my memory serves me, happened in the studios. It really didn't happen to me. I can't think of a time that ever happened to me other than in the studio.
Could you talk about a time in the studio where that happened?
I'm trying to think. I guess I pride myself in being very successful. I was very successful as a studio player, and it didn't. If it did happen, it didn't happen awful lot. I'll tell you who it happened to. You know Roger Kellaway?
Just interviewed him a couple months ago. Sure.
Okay. I did a lot of work with Roger over the years, among which A Star is Born with Barbra Streisand.
Mm-hmm.
I've done many dates with Barbra Streisand. She's real tough. She's real good, though. And Roger did that movie, and the first cue we did was the main title. The main title is the opening of the movie. It's a big deal, the main title and the end title. So we run the main title down. It's magnificent. Barbara comes out and says, I don't like it. And everybody, it's a big orchestra. Everybody is, you could hear a pin drop. What do? Roger had to go home and rewrite it.
Wow.
Because she didn't like it. So that's not against me. It was against him. But those kinds of things would happen all the time in a studio situation.
When I speak quite often with Jim Keltner, and I asked him about you, and he said the only time that he played jazz with you is with Albert Stinson. Do you recall these sessions?
Absolutely, very well. And Jim is a good friend, and we've done many dates together in the studios. But I remember, yes, and I did an LP with Albert. I'm trying to think, was Jim Keltner on that? I don't remember, yeah. But was your question mainly about Jim or just remembering Albert?
No, because I've done 2 interviews with Keltner, and he grew up playing drums, but man, every time he was on the bandstand with Albert, he wanted to be Philly Joe Jones. And
oh yeah.
And
well,
I
worked with Albert, unfortunately, was on this old LP of mine. And while I'm thinking about it, I hate to transpose time frames, but I have to say this.
Yeah.
You're well aware of Bill Frisell.
Oh, I've interviewed Bill, sure.
Okay. They had a party for Bill for his new album, which is movie themes, and he wanted to get some of the quote-unquote old guys that did the original scores of these movies to question them. I was one of the quote-unquote old guys. So I never met Bill. I get there early, and I'm the only one there, and Bill greets me holding one of my old LPs for me to sign it, and proceeds to compliment me like I'm some kind of god, man, and it was the nicest. I get teary-eyed thinking about it. What a nice man he is, first of all, and secondly, he was so complimentary, and he wanted me to autograph it. And here he's got this huge name and very famous and everything, and he just made me feel so good because I guess I was one of his early influences. And I guess we're going to get together and all that. And so I just thought I'd mention it because it was one of my old LPs that he had all these years.
Well, I'm looking here. Revelation Records, 1972, Dennis Budimir, The Session with Albert, Volume 1, Keltner, Budimir, Gary Foster, and Albert Stinson. And
That's right.
Albert Stinson died of a heroin overdose. But I just, even though someone Quincy said that to your wife that she married a black man, I just wanted you to talk about 3 white cats trying to play black music and how much fun you had, how much you wanted. Just put me back there in that time when you guys were playing.
Well, it was phenomenal, and one of the other names I can mention when I first started out was Billy Higgins. And Billy and I were kids, and we would play little casuals and stuff together, and I knew at the time, this guy is incredible. What a feeling he has.
Oh, yeah.
And he obviously became huge, and I always wanted, at the later stages of my life, to work with him, and unfortunately, he did a bad thing. He went and passed away, and so that never happened. But I can't say enough about him. The only thing I can tell you, nothing really to relate when we were young, except we were kids and we had a lot of fun playing together. So.
Was it just you and Billy? Like drums and guitar kind of stuff.
What did you say about the guitar?
Was it just? I mean, I have these Sandy Bull records. You know that cat Sandy Bull. He played like a lot of different types of guitars, and I have albums with him and Billy Higgins just in a duo setting.
So now, who is playing with Billy Higgins? Who did you say?
A guy named Sandy Bull. But
I don't know him, I guess.
No, but my question was with Billy, were you playing just duos, just you and him?
Oh no. It could be dances. It could be any of a number of things, but probably primarily casuals. In those days we would call them casuals. You play for a party or you play for a dance, no big deal. And but I don't know what else to say.
Well,
about
no, I mean
that.
because a lot of people talk about Billy Higgins. Sometimes they get off a session and say, man, I don't know, he was kind of like laying back. I was expecting more out of him, and the response would be, no, man, Billy plays off your energy. If you're going to push it.
Well, right, and he was the type of player, as I remember, that played simply, but what a feeling. The other man that I only worked with one time, I think it was with Bud Shank, was Frank Butler.
Oh yeah.
And he was incredible. Talking about the black thing, I think I would like to mention something that was very sad. When I would join Chico Hamilton, I joined Harry James in 1958, and I tell you many stories. It would be nice if we could do a 2-parter.
We will. No, well, of course we'll do. We got a second part. We'll make.
Okay, yeah, because I have so many stories. But anyway, with Chico, one of our first gigs usually would be in Philadelphia or New York from L.A. He would take 2 cars, a big Chrysler Imperial. I was with him in 59 or 60, and his brother would be driving a van with all the instruments, and it would be 5 guys. And there would be 2 guys in the van and 5 guys in the Chrysler Imperial. I would sit in back. We would drive non-stop to New York. Are you kidding me, man? And eventually I would say, when we got to whatever state we were in, I said, Chico, I'm getting hungry. And you know what he would say?
What?
We can't stop in this state.
Wow.
Sometimes he would have me go in to buy the food. And then when we went down to Miami to play some fancy gig, me and Nathan Gershman, Nathan Gershman, the cello player, stayed in the white part of town, and they had to stay in the black part. And can you believe that?
Well, no, because I interviewed Ellis Marsalis, the father.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and when they would go to Texas with Lee Charlton, someone would drive him to the black neighborhood, and so he could stay with black people. I mean, it really is. I'm glad you were able to talk about this stuff, because I mean speaks to the segregation, the very real segregation that still really.
Well, plus, when I joined the union in '55, I think they had just got rid of the black quote unquote union. There was a separate black union and a separate white union. It might have been at that point, and then a couple years later became one. But I mean, I think about those things, and it's unbelievable.
No, this is so important, because for history, man, Um, that black union was present on the East Coast or all over the country? I want to be very clear.
Well, I don't know. I can only relate to our union in Los Angeles, and I know they had a black union, but I don't remember when I joined with HB in '55 if it was still operational, and then a couple of years later, right around that time, it was either one union or soon to be one union.
But I guess my overarching question is, do you think that the black union was much more effective for the black musician?
Oh, God, I don't know how to answer that.
But I thought...
you would think that they would want to be all one.
But Quincy said you were a black man. No, I'm just kidding. No, here's the thing. I got a treat for Dennis Budimir here. We're having a ball here on the Jake Feinberg Show. We got another piece of music here, Dennis. Take your time, settle in, and then we'll come back and break it down.
Okay.
Music on the Jake Feinberg Show, brought to you by Abbott Taylor Jewelers, the Stereo Hospital, the Circle Tree Ranch, Craig Pretzinger of Allstate Insurance, and we thank them for their support. All right, Mr. Budimir, what do you think that is?
That guy can play his ass off, and I think it's me.
Well, okay, that's the easy part, but what is that?
I'm trying to think, you really dug in the archives for that. That's probably 50 years plus ago. Wait a minute, I think it's 60 years ago.
Yeah, you're darn right about that.
I'm trying to think, is there one other guitar player on it?
No, you did
Is that with me and Billy Bean?
No, Billy Bean had left. That was just you doing a rhythm track, and then you did the solo over the top. That's your album called Alone Together. And
okay, that one. Oh my God! And I was a
no, and believe me,
player,
let me tell you something, Budimir. That picture is the one that's going to be all over social media. I mean, the picture of you on that. What a beautiful cat, man! Holy cow! And
now wait, is that the one where I'm sitting down in a sweater?
It could be, it was one of your suits, Yeah. But no, the thing is, okay, that tune was the only original on the First of all, the only other cat that was on the record was Gary Foster. It was just you and Gary.
Okay, all right.
but that track was called Blues for Ray. Who was
Ray was an old friend of mine, and that's why I named it that.
You want to talk a little bit about one of the L's on my program is leadership. You've been a band leader on some really great sort of off the beaten path labels. You've also worked with cats like Mancini, Axelrod, Quincy. Can you talk to the audience about some qualities of leadership that you think are vital?
I never considered myself a leader, and I think it was a very small part of my career because I had two careers in a way. From roughly 17 to 25, a jazzer, and from 25 to now, or 10 years ago, a studio guy. And I don't want to make any claims that I was a leader, but so I feel a little strange to say what the good qualities would be. But to me, just hire the best guys and let them play, man. And in any situation, people like myself have all worked with leaders that were real mean and everything, and it wasn't much fun. And I'll tell you, I digress. I think you'll allow me to digress.
Of course.
When I was with Peggy Lee in 1960 or 61, my roommate and great friend, when I say roommate, we would, to save money and stuff, we would just stay in the same room, and was Stan Levy, and I really miss him. He was a great drummer. And in the band at one time was me, Stan, Max Bennett, and Joe Harnell. And I think he did pass away a number of years ago, but he wasn't a very nice guy. And I remember I got into an argument with him. We were working. There was a very famous job, and a record came out on it with Peggy. It was called Basin Street East. Peggy Lee at Basin Street East. You might have heard it or had it. Anyway, we rehearsing, and Joe, he could be cruel and just real mean. And so I got into it verbally with him. And Stan Levy used to be an ex-fighter, and he even fought in Madison Square Garden. And Stan was my protector, man, and he got up behind me and said, "Go and hit him, Denny. I'm right behind you."
It's funny. I'm friends with Angela, his wife, on Facebook, and she's a huge supporter of mine. Stan Levy was a bad drummer. He's a good drummer, man. He was real.
Oh, he was phenomenal. The time feeling he had was not like any others. And Angie's was great, man. I hope she's listening or will be listening. So. Oh,
she's gonna love it. No, we've entered into a new year in this lifetime, Dennis, and I just wanted you to talk to the audience about your concept of love and how you bring love to the world.
Well, I'll tell you what. I think my album, without sounding maudlin or trying to push it, I'm so proud of it because in my early playing, you could hear kind of a raw roughness, which is phenomenal. I think is great, and I was exploring everything. And I still have that, but the roughness is gone, but the fire is still there. And the album that I made is full of love and emotion. And so many people have told me that it's just it makes them feel so good. My engineer, his name is Bobby Fernandez. The engineer who did the final remix on it was the head engineer at Warner Brothers for 16 years, and he worked real hard on it, and he spent 20 days remixing it and another 10 for cleanup. And he said, "Dennis, you should put a disclaimer on your album," because he calls it a baby-making machine, or album rather. It's very romantic, and it could be dangerous.
Well, it could be like a new Marvin Gaye kind of LP, right?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go.
Hey, before I let you go, I just spoke to him yesterday, and I didn't realize you had done a lot of. I know you did a lot of studio work with him, but the microtonal master Emil Richards. Did you?
Emil, man, we go way back.
Can you talk?
We go way back.
Because that guy fought for bathroom breaks for percussionists. Percussionists did not have bathroom breaks in the studio. Do you remember the first time you crossed paths with Emil, or can you tell me a good Emil Richards story?
Well, one of the cute Emil Richards story is when I lived in Hollywood and he did, I would pick him up a lot of the time in my old big Cadillac. We had big Cadillacs in those days before guitar players had cartage, and cartage means all of our instruments are in trunks and we don't have to carry them anymore. We would have to buy these big Cadillacs with big trunks. Anyway, we would. One of our jobs was at MGM Studios in Culver City, and I said, Emil, how far is MGM from your house? He said, about half a joint. Another time, we were in RCA doing a record date, and he's rather short in stature.
Oh, my God.
I put him on my knee as if I was, he was a little puppet, and I said, son of Tony Bennett, he's got a pretty good proboscis, so we would have fun. I love Emil, man. A great musician. Can't say enough about him, man.
Yeah, well, I just want to see Budimir playing in 13/8 time. Really, that's it, you know?
Well, I don't know. I don't think I've ever done that.
Well, listen, Dennis, we will plan for part 2. I had a ball. I really hope you enjoyed yourself.
Oh, I was ready for so many stories. Do we have time for any other story?
The Jake Feinberg Show is out of time, my friend. We have.
Okay, well, we'll have to continue, and we'll have to do a third installment on the studio years.
No, we just scratched the surface with Dennis Budimir. And listen, man, Happy New Year. We'll be in touch. I'll get you a copy of this, and we'll move on from there.
Okay, Jake, take care.
Happy New Year.
Bye-bye.
All right. That's it, folks. Thanks a lot. Welcome to the new year, 2016. We got a huge amount of stuff in store for you. Just getting started here. Thank you for being part of the program, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks to my man, engineer on the board today, Mike Roper, and we will see you back here next week. Peace.